I mean, you get to jump off of a boat. Does it get any cooler than that? Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into the Hill Pursuit Podcast. This is episode 103. I'm Hayden, head coach of Hill Pursuit. Happy you're here. Today is going to be a race preview. We're jumping right from a race preview, race recap of PA Happy Valley directly into a race preview, and then, of course, a race recap in a few days of Ohio 70.3. Really excited about this one. But before we dive into the race itself and the, some of the expectations I have for myself, I just want to say thank you for being here. Thanks for following along. If you haven't already, just like and subscribe to all of the things anywhere on social. All of it's just at Hill Pursuit, Instagram, Facebook, X. We're on LinkedIn as well. And check us out on YouTube. We have some race day videos. Of course, all of these podcasts you can find on Spotify, Podbean, Google, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. But again, like, subscribe, share, drop a comment. We really appreciate it. It helps to spread the message. And again, of course, the main goal here is to just give a little bit of insight into my everyday experience as an athlete, as a coach, and hope that you can get a small little nugget that might help you with your own racing, your own preparations, maybe coaching, whatever the case may be. Glad you're here. So let's dive into an Ohio 70.3 preview. This is a really fun race for me. This race was announced, I believe, 4.5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. It has to be 4.5. Because in 2022 was the first year of this race being held in Sandusky. I think it had previously been held in Delaware, Ohio. And my family has a lake house in Sandusky, and we've been going to it for, I've been in my wife's family. I've been around for, 13-ish, 14 years at this point. So it's been quite a while that we've been heading out there. And then all of a sudden, Ironman announced a new race venue of Sandusky, Ohio. And it kind of just like blew my mind. I told everybody about it, and they were like, no, that can't be right. There's no way. But here we are a few years later. This will be its fourth year holding the race, Ohio holding the race in Sandusky, and I think it's been really successful, to be honest, up to this point. I did the race in 22, the first year. I did the race in 23, and we'll talk a little bit about those race performances, I guess, how I did then versus what I'm expecting to do in a few days. And then last year in 2024, the race was held on the exact same date as Ironman Lake Placid. So, and I had chosen to tackle Placid last year, so I did miss Ohio one out of its first 3 years. I missed it in 24, but this race is it feels almost like very similar to how Happy Valley felt for me, almost like a backyard, like a home course race, which is super exciting because I've been going out here for so long. I'm familiar with the area. It's really accessible for my family to get there, attend it. Selfishly in the stage of my life right now, I need to pick races that are really easy for my family to travel to, but also I need to pick races where my wife can get some help because I have 4 kids now, and I can't just take my wife to, I'd love to eventually, but somewhere like Wisconsin, where my family won't be traveling to that race because it's not easily accessible. So if I just drag my wife there and then all of a sudden she's by herself for most of the day navigating an unknown race course with all 4 kids. And as a reminder, my kids are 6, 4, 2, and 0. So that would be very, very challenging. So yeah, the stage of my life, I'm picking races where my family can get there, not for me at all, to help my wife, because I know my wife is a great supporter and she loves being at this stuff to support me. So this is if I can't get family support, not for me. Not for me. If I can't get family support for my wife and kids, it's literally out of the question. It's not possible. So that's why this season it's part of the reason I chose these 2 races that essentially feel like home to me and are very close in proximity to home. Happy Valley, I had family attend, and then Sandusky, we have a ton of family that are just always at the lake over the summer. So it's easily accessed for me and also my family, so I'm really excited about it. What's really awesome about this race is the start. I say awesome because people on the outside who maybe aren't from the area look at this race start and they're like, oh wow, this is like the coolest thing ever. Excuse me, quick sip of coffee. And I think it is really cool. The race starts with a jump off of the ferry. So in Sandusky, there's a ferry that travels back and forth to an island, and the ferry essentially just sits docked. It's not like they take you out anywhere, but the ferry sits docked, which makes it accessible for spectators as well, which of course is great. But it sits docked, and everybody just kind of files into the ferry where the cars would be, prior to traveling to an island. And, Ironman's typical start, every couple seconds, 3, 2, 1, beep, a few people jump off the back of this ferry. The jump is like, it's not a big jump at all. It's like 5 feet maybe. But it's really cool. It's different. It's a different kind of race start. The social media surrounding it makes it look awesome, right? Like you see herds of people jumping off of a boat to start a race. Now listen, like the thrill of that jump off the boat is over in a split second, because if you don't do it right, so if you're listening and you're racing this weekend, you don't do it right, your goggles fell off, maybe you lost them, and you're sucking in lake water within 2 seconds of your race, which, you sucking in water from Lake Erie is probably a bad idea. So you have to jump off this boat the right way, and, you think you know how to do it if you've not done it before, okay? But you need to do it a certain way so that everything stays, you don't lose your goggles, your swim cap doesn't, fall off. Not that it would fall off. I have never seen that or heard of that, but I've seen and heard people losing their goggles at this type of a race start. So you can't jump, you can't like dive in, you can't dolphin in. You literally have to like step off this boat. You're not allowed to do it any other way. I'm not suggesting this. I'm saying you're not allowed to do anything but step off of the boat and just kind of flop into the water. Now, I suggest that you fall in at an angle. If you pencil in, you're going to carry a lot more velocity into that water, and if you're not doing the right thing with your goggles, they're flying off. So my suggestion is to lean slightly forward with your upper body so that you create more like surface contact as you're entering the water. So you essentially aren't just plummeting to the bottom of the lake, essentially. Now, as you're doing this, you have to, this is a suggestion, not mandatory. I highly recommend that you have one hand on your goggles as you're entering, because if you don't, even, you don't want to make your goggles so tight that you have a headache or a migraine into this race. So naturally, you have a comfortable fit of your goggles. You can't over tighten them and just hope that they stay on. Keep them comfortable, but just put your hand on your goggles as you're going in, on your eyes. Keep your hand on your eyes so that as you're entering the water, and again, you're entering at an angle, so it's not like a super high velocity entrance, that your goggles stay on. You don't go crazy far under the water, and then boom, you just fall right in. And if you don't start moving forward, your people behind you are flopping on top of you. So, and I've not necessarily seen that, but I would imagine towards the back end of this race, as people are entering who maybe have less experience or less comfort in the water, that's probably happening because people are probably hesitant to jump off, or they freak out in the water. In my mind, if you can imagine something happening, it's probably happened. So I would imagine that people hesitate when they're supposed to be jumping off, according to Ironman's countdown. And then I would also imagine that people behind them don't hesitate, and there's a little bit of madness for, a few seconds or a few athletes where they have to kind of control it and, pull athletes back from entering. But anyways, do this the right way. Do it the smart way. Don't go crazy about it. It's fun, but it's not like the coolest thing in the world, but it is pretty darn cool in my opinion. You do it a handful of times, right? This is the 4th year, my 3rd year. I mean, it's something it's another element of the race. You just have to get through it, because you do it the wrong way, it could ruin your swim before your swim even starts. Let's talk a little bit more about this swim. This swim, you know what? I think last year it actually somehow was wetsuit legal. I'll be completely honest. I don't know for sure that it was wetsuit legal, but I'm pretty sure it was wetsuit legal. Again, I was racing Lake Placid on the same weekend, so I wasn't following along with Ohio's specifics, I guess, in terms of water temp, in terms of even just air temp. I really just wasn't following along a whole lot, but I think it was wetsuit legal last year. The previous 2 years that I raced, in 22 and 23, the water temp was easily wetsuit optional, meaning it was over 76.1 degrees. And I fully expect it to be optional again this year. So I was at the lake last weekend for 4th of July, and the water temp was literally mid-80s. Somehow since then, I don't know how, because it's still been crazy hot. Somehow since then, the water temp dropped a little bit, and it's now, according to a national website that shows the water temp at different parts of the lake in Sandusky, apparently it's down to 79. Again, I have no clue how, because it hasn't really rained, and even if it has rained, it's been spotty, and it's still been mid-80s air temp. So I don't know how this water temp has dropped. I don't know where they're measuring this water temp, but somehow it's dropped over the past 10 days. My guess is it will continue dropping, because I think it's supposed to rain every day the rest of this week. Not all day, but I do think it's supposed to rain in Sandusky every day, at some level. And the air temp is going to drop to low 80s. So the water temp's 79 right now. Literally, my guess is it drops to 78. I do not see this coming close to a wetsuit legal water temp at all. I think it's just been way too hot out there. The rain might cool it down a little bit more, but at this point, it's been too warm for it to come down, in my opinion. Too warm to come down to a wetsuit legal water temp of 76.1. That's just my guess. That being said, if you're wearing a wetsuit, you're in the back of the pack. There's no problem with that. Every athlete should do exactly what they're most comfortable with all the time. That I firmly believe that, especially in race settings. So stay with your comfort, what's most comfortable for you in a race setting. Throw the wetsuit on if you need to. You're starting in the back of the pack. That's fine. If it's not wetsuit legal, I'll just be wearing a swim skin. I selfishly prefer that, and I'll take a little bit of a slower swim, and I'll dive into my expectations, I guess. But I prefer that because I don't like having to bike through a ton of different athletes. And I feel like I've never worn a wetsuit in a non-legal race. I've always just worn a swim skin. But even with my swim time being where it is, like roughly around a 2-minute per 100 swim, so roughly around high 30s, low 40s swim time, I feel like I'm always passing people on the bike, and that, that's the imbalance of triathlon. It's never perfectly balanced. Like, until you get to the super, super high levels, you're not going to race next to the same athlete all day long. If you do, that's crazy. I'd love to hear that has happened, because I doubt I know any human alive who's ever done that. But I'm sure at the very, very high levels, professional levels, that's certainly happening. Of course it is. That being said, for me, I come out, again, roughly at 40 minutes. I'm still passing a ton of people on the bike. Not saying that they don't come past me again at some point on the run. Maybe they do, because people certainly pass me on the run. I'm not a cheat on the run course. But that being said, if I were to wear a wetsuit, I would just I know I'd be passing even more people on the bike, because I technically would be starting back even farther. And again, based on my bike fitness, it would just make for a more frustrating bike. I'd have to be weaving in and out of people, constantly passing people, and I prefer to not have to do a lot of that. So that being said, I'll take a little bit of a slower swim with the swim skin so that I have a more comfortable rest of my race, to be honest. And that's how I frame my mind around that. Excuse me. That being said, this is a hard swim. It's a protected inlet, but quick coffee break here. It's a protected swim, but the nature of where they put this swim makes it so that you are swimming out. There's only a couple turns. I'm not going to try to explain it because I'm not providing a visual at the moment. You jump off. Okay, I'll give a quick one. You jump off the boat. You swim out like 100 meters. You take an immediate left. Then all you're doing is making a rectangle. You go out really, really far. You hang a right. You take another quick right, and you come back really, really far to the finish. Simple. The nature of the long out and the long back, based on where the swim is, in my opinion, the out swimmers and the back swimmers are too close to each other. There is zero chance that they're running into each other. That's not what I'm saying. They're still probably 50 to 75 meters away from each other. But the nature of it, and you have, thousands of athletes in the water, is that eventually it creates somewhat of, and I've used this term before and I'm not the only one, it creates somewhat of a washing machine effect in the water, which means that water is moving, and at some point, based on where you are, you're going to feel like you're going nowhere, for a long part of the swim. I felt like that both years I raced this event. But here's the other thing. I had a conversation with an athlete about this, and he brought up a really good point, that it potentially feels that way for a certain level of swimmer. But if you're fast enough, you probably avoid that feeling. And if you're slow enough, you also probably avoid that feeling, which I think is probably true, but I don't know for sure. So anyways, if you're, I can only speak to my experience, and what I've heard other athletes say is that there is a washing machine effect that happens with this swim course due to how close the out swimmers are to the in swimmers. Not that there's a chance you're running into them, not anywhere near that at all, but just you create a lot of current in a still body of water. You create a lot of current when you have multiple thousands of athletes swimming. You probably have a few hundred passing each other at the same time. Now, eventually, you're going to create a current. So in my opinion, that's another reason to start earlier as opposed to later. But again, there's also the potential that fast swimmers avoid this and slow swimmers also kind of avoid this effect. So that's just me speaking from some anecdotal experience that I've had. That being said, this swim without the wetsuit comes out to be roughly like 8 minutes, which is a lot, I guess, but 8 minutes slower than I would expect. I like to be around, I would expect in a wetsuit, a solid swim wetsuit, 38 minutes. So I'm expecting, 45-ish, which I don't even like the sound of that, to be honest, based on my swim fitness. So we'll see how that goes, but I would expect, mid 40s for this swim for me. And I'm okay. Like I said, I'm okay with that. That's where I was I'll take a quick rewind. I was roughly a few minutes slower than that in both 22 and 23 when I swam this course. So I expect a little bit faster, I guess, maybe 45, 44, somewhere in there. But again, it's not a blistering pace swim. So I'll take a quick step back and say this is kind of funny. So 22 and 23, I finished the race. The full race finish time was less than a minute away from each other, which is kind of cool, I think. Both finish times were 5:58. One was like 5:58.0 something, and the other one was 5:58.50 or something like that. So roughly like 40 seconds apart total time. Very different bike legs and very different run legs, and I'll explain those differences when we get to those elements of the course. But in terms of the swim, I think one of them was 47, the other one was 49. So I expect to be a little bit faster on the swim. So like I said, and now it's not an easy swim. I'm not a perfect swimmer. My swim fitness right now is roughly a 2 minute per 100 with a wetsuit in the open water. So, 215, 220, that puts me low mid 40s. And I'm okay with that. This is not the easiest swim in the world. And I'm confident in the rest of my race as well, in addition to my swim fitness. So that's likely where I will be. A little bit faster than 22 and 23. Not as fast as I would prefer right now, but comfortable. All right. This bike course is 100% flat. I don't care what Ironman says within their athlete guide. There's one tiny rolling hill. That's it. And it might be like 20 feet. And if you sneeze, you're already over the hill. So this course is literally 100% power, effort. No bike course is easy ever. That's not what I'm saying. This is easy to plan because it's just constant power output. You don't have to deal with, the undulating terrain and trying to map out or plan yourself or with your athlete what an average power output should be because you have 3,000 feet of vert as part of this bike course. Not the case at all. You have roughly 10 feet. Again, I don't care what Ironman athlete guide says. Now, that being said, the difficult part about a completely flat bike course is you're constantly powering out. There's no coasting, there's no climbing, but there's no coasting. So you have a constant power output. And again, that makes it somewhat easier in concept, easier to plan, but it doesn't make it an easier bike course at all. It makes it a faster bike course. It doesn't make it an easier bike course. In 22, I'm trying to remember. In 22, I think I rode like a 244 bike. And I think in 23, I rode like a maybe 10 minutes faster, 234, 236, something like that. I'll be completely honest. I'm going to be faster than both of those times this year. My bike fitness it's not like the best it's ever been, but it is better than that. Now it's all part of the larger equation of the entire day, of course. My bike fitness is better. I shouldn't say my bike split will 100% be faster, because I'm not going to force myself to hold something faster, but I'm hoping that I'm right around 230, maybe slightly faster, 2.5 hours, which is like 22 miles an hour. Power output, I'll probably try to hold like somewhere around 190, maybe a little bit higher. That'll put me roughly 2.5 hours. The asterisk with this bike course is that there is a lot of wind. I shouldn't say there is. I'll say there's potential that this is a very windy bike course. If it is, that changes everything, because your power output could be super high, but you're not going anywhere, right? Or you're going 17 miles an hour, and for me, in that example I just gave, I'm pushing 200 watts instead of going 22 miles an hour, 23 miles an hour. I'm going nowhere, or it feels like you're going backwards. So all of that out of the equation, perfect day scenario, I'll be right around 2.5 hours. And I'm very confident in that based on where I'm at right now and based on my bike. My bike's pretty quick compared to what I've had in the past. Now the bike doesn't make you fast. Your fitness makes you fast, but the bike can make you more efficient. So, and I feel like I'm significantly more efficient on this new bike. So I'm really excited to get out there, have a really solid and consistent bike leg. And again, previous bike legs, 245 and I want to say 236 or 7. So I'm expecting to be faster than both of those. Lastly, heading to the run, this is a very spectator-friendly run, which I'm excited about because, again, I have some family that's easy access for them to come out and see it, give a quick high five, me to see the kids, and I'm looking forward to that. So it's a very spectator-friendly. I think, it's 2 loops, and I think if your family is wanting to see you, they can see you like 5 different times, because you literally weave through the streets of downtown Sandusky, and it's like you're doing a snake on back-to-back roads. So if your family sees you in one spot, they walk 1 block the other direction, they can see you again in like another 1.5 miles. So it's a really great run course for that reason. If you're listening to this and you've not run this race before or raced this race before, you need to be careful on this run course. There is no shade, none. And the temperature is not letting up at all. This run course is going to be brutally hot. It's going to be brutally humid. It's not going to be comfortable. So if you're not prepared for that, you need to be mindful of your pace selection. I mean, it's going to be a hot day. And, at that point, you might be praying that you get some rain to cool things down. But it is not, it's not an easy run course at all. So keep that in mind as you begin to tackle this run course. There's no shade. There's nowhere to, catch a little break. At times there are, people spraying water on you. Again, super spectator friendly. There's lots of hoses, and the people of Sandusky know that this is a brutal run course, so they're out in full force trying to keep people cool, which is great. But just be super mindful of the run being very, very hot and you needing to plan for it. In the past, the run that I've had in these different years of the race, I've had in 22, I was roughly like a 2:15 half marathon, which if you followed along with the Happy Valley preview and recap that I did, that's pretty close to what I ran there, that I was disappointed with. So I fully expect to be faster than that. I'll dive into that here briefly. And then in 23, it was even hotter, and I fell off a little bit, and I ran like a 2:30 something, or a high 2:20s, I believe. So significant difference, and roughly like an 11:15 pace versus like a 10:15 pace, something like that. And I wasn't super thrilled with that, but at the same time, every single race is different. I'll say that until I'm blue in the face, but every single race is different, and it's important that you moderate your pace based on the given day. And I didn't do that super effectively at Ohio, in my opinion, on either of the occasions that I actually raced this course. So all that being said, I know what I'm capable of in a half marathon right now, and I fully expect it to be right at 2 hours, maybe even slightly faster. So that would take me right around like a 9-minute pace, maybe like a 9:10, somewhere around a 9:10, yeah. And I know that I'm capable of that. Now I ran like a 10:15 or 10:20 overall pace at Happy Valley, which was not as crazy hot, but it also was very hilly. So very different run. This is a super flat run. Again, in theory, easy to pace, but the elements of the day will certainly impact it. So all that being said, I'm expecting to be faster in every discipline than I was in 22 and also 2023 at this race. And I don't think it's unreasonable either. I don't know if it's possible that I PR a 70.3, my 70.3, like overall course PR. I do expect to beat 5:58, so I would expect to have an Ohio PR. But my overall PR is like a 5:28 or something like that. And it was on like the most perfect possible day. Quick coffee break. It was on like the most perfect day in terms of temperature, water temperature, wetsuit, flat body of water, really flat bike course, no wind, and then a solid run. Not my best run, but a solid run. And, that was like the perfect storm of 70.3 for all three disciplines for me a couple of years ago. So I'm not sure I have that in me at a race like this, especially with the swim being a little bit slower. But I do feel I have the fitness to do it. So it's just going to be a matter of whether or not the elements of the day, of course, but also whether or not I have the the ability to have a solid race strategy, right? And also just make changes in real time. I think I'm learning to become better at that as I race more. This will be my 8th 70.3. I'm really excited about it. and I'm hoping that I can go under 5:30 overall time. But at the very least, I want to have a course PR, so under 5:58, which again, I hate to say that it should be easy for me to do that, but it really should. As long as I'm not an idiot when I get out onto the run course, because that's where I've made most of my mistakes, is the run course, just generally, not at this course only, just generally in terms of my 70.3 history. Most of my mistakes are made on the run course, and I wouldn't even say most of those mistakes relate back to bike effort and power output, but I would say most of those mistakes are literally being made in real time on the run course, thinking I can go faster than I can too early, falling off, then needing to walk a little bit, which is exactly what happened in Happy Valley. But anyways, I'm super excited about this race. Family's there, family's in town. The weather does look hot, but it looks fun. I prefer races to be hot. I feel like I do a good job with heat regulation and being very aware of how my body is reacting in hot environments, in humid environments. So this is, I look at it as another challenge, another element of the race. And I feel like I do well in races that are hard in terms of the elements. And I say that relative to the field. There are other people that do well with this too. I just feel like I have a little bit more experience with environmental conditions and environmental adversity than maybe some other people, which is why I feel like if it's a hot and a difficult day in terms of the conditions, I feel like I'll have a good day relative to the field, which, of course, if you're following along with Ironman at all, you know that their world championship slot allocation is now based on, after the first slot in each age group, based on performance relative to the field. That is a whole other conversation. I don't even know if I'm qualified to give insight on it. It's so complex, it's crazy. I've tried to wrap my brain around it a few different times, but anyway, that's for another day, potentially. Thank you for following along. If you're here and you've made it this far, really appreciate you. Give a like, subscribe to all the things. We're on YouTube. We have a LinkedIn, all of the socials, Instagram, Facebook, X. Find us everywhere, please. Thank you for following along. You can, feel free to share this episode. Find this and other episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Spotify, Podbean, Google, Apple, wherever you listen, you can find this and all other episodes. We have 102 other episodes. Appreciate you being here. This was episode 103. This was the Ohio 70.3 race preview. I'll see you on the other side in a few days for the race recap. Have a very blessed day.